Hi, and welcome to our podcast, Good Deeds, Real Estate with a Mission. I missed last week, I think. Yes, I did. Hopefully Bill did okay. I'm Diane Davidson from the Fine Homes Group at Keller Williams. I'm here with Nicole Quinn. Bill's stand-in. He's off in a training, 3-day training to get even better at what he does. So here we are. And Nicole is in the trenches. She's an agent on our team and works with lots of buyers and sellers. And we're talking about some questions that buyers in particular have right now.
Yeah.
Tell me what their biggest concern is.
Well, the biggest concern that keeps coming up, and I'm sure this is no surprise to anyone, is they have questions about interest rates and what they can do to still stay in the game.
Okay, so people, it's interesting because I hear from a lot of agents. I was actually at a seminar last night, lending sort of seminar, and a lot of the agents were talking about their buyers hearing about rates going up, but it's really the payment that we try to help and counsel our buyers to stay focused on.
Of course.
And there are so many alternatives. I know a few weeks ago we talked about buy downs. I think we talked about adjustable rate mortgages. And the thing is that right now we are experiencing for the first time in 3 years what we call a fall market.
Mm-hmm. And
traditionally in a fall market, their buyers, sellers start becoming a little bit more negotiable. This is not I don't want this to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, but the point is that we're already seeing, in some cases, more seller concessions, where sellers contribute to a buyer's closing costs, or buyers, offers becoming sort of more easier for buyers to digest. Like they're having home inspections again. Mm-hmm. My contention is that that's sometimes where we're seeing more properties come back on the market. Mm-hmm. We weren't for so long. Buyers were afraid to sort of exercise the buying rights they had for all those years.
Yeah, of course.
Anyway, so back to the alternatives for interest for payments. There are many alternatives to paying the 30-year fixed rate mortgage, and when we hear about rates rising, what's quoted is the 30-year fixed rate with no points. Mm-hmm. And a discount point, 1 point is 1% of the mortgage amount. And in the olden days, when I first got started in 1970, rates went up over 10 and then all the way up to about 18%. And that the rate, by the way, already included 2 discount points. So at 18%, that meant you were still paying 2% of the mortgage amount for the privilege of borrowing money at 18% over 30 years. Yeah. So that's when buy downs, I think, first were instituted. I can't speak to that because I wasn't in real estate in a few thousand years prior. So buy downs are back, and houses are not going to stop selling,
right?
And lenders are not going to stop lending.
Nope.
We're just figuring out ways to make it user friendly.
Yeah.
So there are a few kinds of buy downs, and obviously I'm not a lender, but just to kind of do the 30,000-foot flyover. A buy down can be funded either by the buyer, but usually that's not the case because they don't have the extra cash to throw at it. Mm-hmm. And if they're funded by a seller, it's a credit toward the buyer's closing costs, and that's where the money is funneled, in all the closing cost lanes. And so there are buy downs that go for the full 30 years of the loan, mm-hmm. where a discount point, 1% of the loan amount, reduces the mortgage rate on average 0.25%. There are buy downs that's called a 2-1 buy down. So let's say rates are at 6.75. Mm-hmm. That's the actual rate for your 30-year loan, but it's bought down for the first year 2% below, so it'd be 4.75, and then 5.75 for the second year, and then up to the 6.75. And that's really done with the lender looks at exactly what the difference in payments are. Mm-hmm. And that pot of money to supplement those payments is paid as closing costs, and every month the bank drags some of that money out toward your payment. And so really, even if it goes 3 or 4 years, you look at sort of the averages.
Right.
There are also adjustable rate mortgages, ARMs, that are fixed for X number of years, either 5, 7, or 10, and they are priced lower. So the question really is for our buyers, and this is one thing we do and I know you do this when you counsel yours. The question really is, what do you think your plans are going to be? If unequivocally they're going to live in the house for 30 years, no questions, mm-hmm. no, absolutely positively, which is unlikely. The tardies of burning the mortgage on the front porch.
Yeah.
So that's unlikely. So maybe the best use of that credit is not going to be a buy down for 30 years.
Right.
So I think the 2-1 is great.
Mm-hmm.
I think the 5-year, 7-year, 10-year, I think those are all great.
Yeah.
And I think the most important thing is for our buyers, our buyer clients, to very early on speak to a lender, the lender that they know or that you recommend, because that's the best way to compare. To understand what the best program for them is. The good news is though, there are options, and there are options that are very affordable and very easy to live with.
Mm-hmm.
And the sooner buyers know that, the
Yeah.
sooner agents know that,
Mm-hmm.
so they can counsel their buyers.
Yeah.
The better they're off they're going to be. We don't know what's going to happen with prices, but there are people who say you date the rate, you marry the home. Is that right?
Yeah.
Date the date, right? So I think that's a little misleading. You date the payment.
Yeah.
You marry the
Yeah.
home, right? Because if there are ways to have a very acceptable payment, and know that for many years you don't have to worry,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very palatable for buyers.
Yeah.
And if you're in a 5-year adjustable rate mortgage, it's fixed for 5 years. Most people are going to do something else in that 5 years, or 6 or 7 years, right? And the average is still good. And if nothing else, most economists believe that there will be an opportunity to refinance within
Right.
that time.
Yeah,
For a lower
absolutely.
rate, and there's no prepayment penalty on these loans that
Mhm.
I know of. So that's kind of I don't know if that helps, and I hope that helps your buyers.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think it's incumbent upon us. There are buyers who don't want to continue to look or don't want to start to look,
Mm-hmm.
and it really is our job to explain to them that things really aren't that much, especially in this market where we are in the Boston area and southern New Hampshire and out to Worcester. There are still wonderful opportunities, and there's still a lot of activity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if rather than looking at the national headlines, are just that, national headlines. Some of the what's the word I'm looking for? The conditions that we're seeing in various parts of the country they've been those conditions for a while. When I'm on some of the national calls at KW, there are markets where for a long time things have been what's being reported now, right? And so conversely, we're still in a different market than a lot of the country. And I don't know how long it's going to last, but we're in a season where traditionally, except for the last 3 years, but typically in the fall, the buyers might have a little more power to negotiate, and maybe not every house, right? But everything has to work.
Yeah.
The house has to work, as do the price and terms.
Yep.
And the terms, what's included in the terms, they're financing in the way they're going to pay for it every month.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been seeing that. I mean, the last one that I have under contract, we had seller concessions.
Mhm.
Haven't seen that in ages.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just so that anybody listening in or watching understands the seller concession, typically we throw that term out there.
Yeah, that's true.
Typically
It's
what
very
that
broad.
is it's not, okay, I'll leave the pool table. A seller
Yes.
concession in our industry typically means that the seller is going to give some money back toward buyers' closing costs and prepaid expenses. And that just means, when a buyer closes, they have all sorts of expenses at the closing table, right? And so that wording is what a bank allows.
Right.
And just for the record, typically there's a cap of 3% of the mortgage amount that the bank will allow toward prepaids and closing costs. If someone's putting 20% down, then typically they would allow up to 6%.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, again, something to talk to a lender about.
Right.
So I always like to say there may be a falling down fence, right?
Okay.
And so then there needs a $7,000 replacement.
Yeah.
You don't put in the offer $7,000 toward the
The fence.
fence replacement.
We put-
It's $7,000 toward prepaid costs and closing costs, and then you take the money. The buyer takes the money out of the closing cost pocket and puts it in the fence pocket.
Yes.
Because there are other expenses.
Yeah.
But that's the language a lender allows, and there are limitations on the amounts.
Yes.
And so what many people are doing now is taking that seller concession, that money that they're willing to pay toward prepaids and closing costs, and using that for some sort of buy down if they're not interested in doing the ARM.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful, and I think that will help ease people's minds who are hesitant to get into the market because they keep hearing about the rates,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yep. Yeah, the rate doesn't necessarily have to affect them if they understand the other options.
Yeah.
All the rate is the 30-year fixed rate.
Yes.
Right, and this is, there are other options besides that. I mean, there was a time when rates were so low enough that people opted for the 15-year
Yeah.
mortgage to
Yeah.
pay it off sooner
Mhm.
because they could live with the payments,
Yeah.
right? So it's just about living with the payments and figuring out what your alternatives are, what your
Yeah.
options are.
Yep. And I think there's been a stigma on adjustable rate, and I think that we're starting to see that coming back into fashion now, and people starting to get more educated on why it's not only okay but actually a good idea in a lot of cases.
It is a good idea, and you know that's largely because they were regulated differently
Mhm.
years ago, and
Yes.
people were getting into adjustable rate mortgages that adjusted, say, every 6 months, every year. They were being qualified at the rate, the going in rate, not the
Yeah.
rate that, not what they were going to have to pay.
Mhm.
It resulted in foreclosure, all sorts of things. So all of that is gone.
Yeah.
It's not what adjustable rates are anymore, and so it's a much healthier, safer thing to partake in
Yes.
than it was originally before the government reacted to
Mm-hmm.
what happened as
Yep.
a result.
Yep. I agree.
So, okay, so it's really our responsibility to get to every buyer and to
Mhm.
make sure they understand this, because I think there's a feeling of helplessness for buyers who aren't being communicated with.
Absolutely.
So if agents are looking at watching this, you know, this isn't about competition. This is about doing the best thing we can do to elevate our industry to help as many people as we can. So
Yes.
please talk to your buyers, and even if you're not a KW agent, get in touch, because I'm
Yep.
happy to help.
Yep.
Really. So we were going to talk about how much time we have left. I just saw this article in the Wall Street Journal today. Well, the truth is, Bill Sutton gave it to me. It's really about new building, new construction, and builders are starting. I'll just summarize. Builders are starting to pull back
Okay.
and not start as much construction.
Mhm.
So that was one of the factors. Not enough homes being built. We were behind by, I think, 5 million, but we over the course of as many years, I believe. But the housing shortage contributed to the rise of prices,
Right.
And this, and so builders are pulling back because of labor, because of supplies, and I think that again with buyers, nobody knows what's going to happen,
Yeah.
but that it could cause prices not to come down. It will probably cause rental prices to go up.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, you know, when prospective buyers are concerned about what's happening in the market and where interest rates are going, or interest rates are going, and not paying attention to the payment factor or not understanding the payment factor, they're probably not calculating, unless they have good counsel, not calculating what's going to happen with rent.
Yeah.
If they're renting, if they're in someone's, I don't want to say basement, lower level,
Mm-hmm.
lower finish level, as long as they can stay for 6 or 7 or 8 years, then it may
Yeah,
not
that'll be
matter,
okay.
right? Sure, that's fine. That's what everyone wants to do. But the point is that this is likely going to affect the market, and
Yep.
so again, I think the message here is, and the message for your buyers, is that if you can make it work now, there's no reason not to.
Yeah.
And there are so many ways. So the parting words would be, speak to a lender, speak to your lender,
Mm-hmm.
find out what your options are, and keep looking.
Okay. Well, that was really helpful.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
for sellers, keep your property on the market. Buyers are out there.
Yes, they are absolutely. I just promise 2 weeks is not as long as it feels.
Yeah. 2 weeks is the new week. 2 weeks is the new 3 days.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. And thanks for tuning in. Please be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast platform or subscribe to our YouTube channel.